What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Goblin Town, where today we are doing a classic metal album review of. You want to say it?
Yeah, Blackwater Park by Opeth.
Okay, so backstory time. So this is one of my favorite albums. I should say it's one of my favorite albums of all time, but it's one of my favorite records specifically from Opeth. I love it. Brandon had never heard it before, so I was kind of showing him this record to see what he thought about it, and that's kind of where we're going to go from here. This video is going to be mostly about his response to it, and I'll say a few things here and there as well to kind of help the discussion along. But Brandon, what are your, I guess to start out, what's your overall experience with Opeth? Do you have any kind of background with the band, or as far as listening to their music? What was your first introduction, I should say, to Opeth?
So I definitely would have seen some of their songs on Clone Hero.
Right.
Because that track list is so big. Nothing in particular. I remember the album art, actually the candles and stuff.
That would have been on Ghost Reveries, right? The one, I know what you're talking about. It's got all the lit candles, and it's got I think it's got a window in the background, and it's real dark, and you can see the smoke from the candles, kind of like rising. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Pretty much just that, and then what you've told me. I know about their switch to prog. The things I've heard have made me kind of giggle because I'm like, oh, you're done screaming? Ooh.
Yeah.
But to each their own. I don't know the dude. But yeah, going in, I was pretty blind. I was kind of, not nervous, but I felt a little bit of pressure because I knew you liked it, and I know the perception of Opeth is pretty overwhelmingly positive. So I was I was almost I gotta like this. Yeah, so as I was listening to it...
Well, hold on. Just
okay.
one more thing. When the reason Opeth, I think, has had so much success over their career is they were really, Orchid and I believe, was it Morning Rise were their first two albums? Guys, don't crucify me in the comment section if I'm wrong on that. I know Orchid was their first one. I want to say the next one was Morning Rise. But I know because I've talked to metalheads who were adults when those records came out in the mid and early 90s. And to them, it was a very fresh listening experience. Okay. Because they're coming off the back of 90s death metal. And if you've listened to any early 90s or late 80s death metal, stuff like Bolt Thrower, Death, Obituary, Deicide, it's very, very heavy. Yeah. Very riff oriented. It's very electric. The recordings are very electric. You don't hear a lot of acoustic sections. And Opeth was a death metal band from Sweden, but they incorporated all of these progressive elements in their music. Yeah. The tempo changes and the acoustic sections and the clean vocals. It really kind of set them apart from their peers at the time. So now it's a lot more commonplace. But back then it was, from what I've gleaned anyway, it was very unique for a band like that to be doing something that adventurous in the death metal genre, if that makes sense. So,
well, I'm curious, when did Orchid come out?
I can look it up real quick. I want to say it was 94 or 93.
Well, because that's even before, that's even earlier than, Sound of Perseverance, which I was going to talk about. That death metal's, kind of what I've been more into lately, that heavier sound.
Right.
But even, Sound of Perseverance, Voice of the Soul has, that nice acoustic part. And that's getting into, progressive and softer than, I guess, normal.
Okay, let's see. Orchid was 1995.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah,
right before. Okay.
So it's really it's death metal, but it's really what it is it's progressive metal.
Yeah.
So if you have a background in prog rock,
Yeah.
than the people that had a background in prog rock, stuff like King Crimson, Yes, Camel, Jethro Tull, Rush. You know, they would be a lot more inclined to be into bands like Dream Theater and Opeth. You know, when the '90s came around.
Yeah.
So death metal took a lot more of its influence. Its early death metal took a lot more of its influence from stuff like uh, hardcore punk, thrash, bands like Slayer, Annihilator, you know, stuff like that. So we're talking about two kind of parallel streams in the progression of metal music and rock music going forward a little bit. So I guess you were looking for some death metal, and I kind of like threw you a curveball. I'm like, well, here's some prog, but I mean, it's still death metal, but it's definitely proggy. You know, it's very, very proggy. So, but anyway, let's get into your thoughts on the album. What did you think?
Yeah. So the biggest itching thing with me, and this is truly something personal, is just how long and drawn out seems harsh, but like it's longer. Me personally, it's harder for me to keep my attention on that just from the beginning. Not to say anything about what Opeth has done on the album, just those longer songs are harder for me. But we've chatted, and you know, you've mentioned their atmosphere, and I appreciate what they've created with their atmosphere in some of those parts that are slower. Because I'm trying to listen for like notes, I think, and there's not a whole lot going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of space, and it leaves me uncomfortable. I don't know. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's
You're
good
like,
for
fill
me.
the void, fill the void.
Well, no, I mean, even talking about meditation, I'm like, I need to train my focus.
Well,
like
I will
to
say,
listen to the music.
yeah, I will say that this kind of music definitely requires an attention span.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, Blackwater Park is like 12 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, who in our modern day and age has the time to sit and listen to a 12-minute long song consistently?
No, I mean, I watch TikToks all the time.
Yeah, I know.
Like...
our attention, especially the younger generations, I'm kind of on the edge, I feel like, of the younger generation, because I'm in my early 30s, and I'm kind of caught between two worlds. I hang out with a lot of people in their 50s and 60s, and back in their day, there were a lot of longer songs, you know, back in the 70s, for example. And then I talked to a lot of kids who are in their late teens, early 20s, and they're a lot used to stuff that's around the 3-4 minute mark.
Yeah.
You know, that's generally where they're most comfortable. So taking it on this album is long. It's like an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's a long album, and the songs are long, and it definitely requires some patience. You know, hopefully the payoff's going to be there, but not always. So.
Well, so that made it hard for me to listen to how I normally listen to music, which is just while I'm doing other stuff. But a lot of times, I mean, like, you know, we did the Necrogoblicon album, that kind of shit kind of forces my attention, even if I'm doing something else. So I'm like, yeah, like jamming along. But with this, it just kind of blends into the background, and all of a sudden I'm like, dude, I haven't even listened to the past 2 songs.
Yeah.
But it was nice whenever we sat down and listened to it, and I was just focused on the music. I liked what I heard. Whenever, I mean, in Leper Affinity, whenever it first comes in with that wall, just like all the chords, like,
Yeah.
it's just good. It's grooving. You know, makes you move.
But the funny, I want to bring something up about what you just said about the Leper Affinity, because if you notice that first that first riff that comes into the song, if you pay it, you're a guitar player, you know that depending on the notes you play in a given chord, the chord is going to elicit a different emotion and a different sound.
Yeah.
You know, and even changing one note in a chord can completely change the emotional flavor of that chord.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so those chords that they're playing at the beginning there aren't power chords.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know enough about music theory to be able to tell you what the chord is. I just know when I hear it, they call it a chord voicing. It's the different notes that are used to build and create a chord.
Mm-hmm.
And Opeth is very good. You'll notice in a lot of these songs on this album, the chord voicings that they choose, they're always designed to make the listener feel a slight sense of unease. And a slight sense of anxiety.
Yeah, no.
And you'll find that all over this album.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the fact that I read that Michael Ockerfeldt, the guitar player, is not trained to music,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the fact that he's creating and playing all these different chords is like kind of a mind blower, because he shouldn't be able to do that. It'd be like somebody who's never been taken an English class writing a novel. And like the novel's like, it's a great novel. You're like, how where did this come from? You know, You don't have any training in this.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, there is always such a big sense of that doom. I actually think I almost wish it paid off stronger. Which honestly, with the whole album kind of does. In my notes, I wrote down for Blackwater Park. I personally would have liked if more of the album was like the second half of that song, or just like the end of it, because that doom, you're kind of like, what's gonna happen? But then I think it just keeps going. You get like all these doomful riffs, and it's like this really good guitar work, and I love the complementary parts that are working together, but there's not like a big, I don't know, right? I got a lot of energy.
There's not a big payoff.
Yeah, there's not like a big like.
Are you looking for a breakdown?
No, not even a breakdown.
Did you notice there's not a single breakdown on this whole album? Did you notice that?
Oh, fair. No, I wasn't thinking about that.
There's also, if I can remember correctly, there may be only one blast beat.
Mm-hmm.
I think it appears on the song Blackwater Park,
Mm-hmm.
the closer. But yeah, it's very you know, like deathcore would become a huge thing.
Yeah.
And you know, blast beats are a huge part in death metal.
Mm-hmm.
This album and Opeth's music in general breaks a lot of those conventions.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that helps them stand out. But if you're trying to get into those two genres, you may want to avoid an album like this, because it's not going to fulfill that thirst,
Mm-hmm.
that need,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to have those elements in there.
Yeah.
Like a breakdown or those super fast drums or whatever it is you're looking for.
Yeah. So, well, and it wasn't even like, I think I could handle the speed. There was just a certain, I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, like literally just like double bass pedals. There wasn't a whole lot of that. But it all works. What it is, like what is there works well. There's a lot of highlight moments in my brain. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but like going back there and listening, I'd be like, oh yes, this part, yes, this part, yes, this part. And I think, yeah, I've picked up on the atmosphere of the album, and I know, like, I'll know if I'm in the mood for it.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm also curious, just to have more time. I mean, as time goes on, I'll have, you know, after years pass and I've listened to each song, I'm sure I'll develop to like some of these a lot.
What did you think of Bleak?
Like Bleak was good. I like the whole soundscape. That's what I wrote. I could dance to the groove on it, and I said I fuck with the outro. Because I mean, all I remember you were describing, just that Eastern sound is nice. I mean, like, I'm familiar with it from like Metallica, but it's not the most common sound in music. I mean, in metal, I think it gets brought up a lot more often. But so that was nice. That was fresh. I don't know what else to say.
One thing I wanted to mention about Bleak is that, like I think I told you, Steven Wilson, does guest vocals on that
Yeah.
song, the chorus. And you were kind of like, hey man, there's not really a chorus here. When we were listening to the Leper Affinity, and I was like, Bleak has a very obvious chorus in it. So, listen to that one, and then, we listened to that, and then, they have the clean singing right in the middle, where they're like, I can't remember the lyrics, but basically there's kind of a cool little run or a breakdown, not a breakdown, but a cool little run, and then it breaks right into the chorus, and then you have that cool chord progression, and then they start singing. Steven Wilson does guest vocals on that, and he actually produced the record, and he's a living legend himself. He's they kind of call him the Prince of Prague. He's a producer, and he's gone back and remastered a lot of those classic prog albums from the early 70s. And he's also got a couple of bands. He's got Porcupine Tree, and then his own solo project, Steven Wilson. And he's got a lot of great material out there. And my family, they already know about Steven Wilson, and maybe down the line we can cover some of his music. But yeah, it was kind of a cool collision of things. You got the guy from Porcupine Tree and the guys from Opeth kind of collaborating on one album. So it was a really cool. What I'm saying is I'm really glad that happened.
Yeah.
Because I think Steven Wilson did a really good job with this record. It sounds very clean. The layering is great. There's so many different sounds you'll hear when you listen to the music, and the atmosphere on the album is just killer. It's like definitely transports your mind to different places when you listen to it. So, but go ahead. What were you gonna say? Do you have anything else that kind of caught your ear when you were listening to it?
Well, you were just saying about the atmosphere. Looking at the lyrics, I didn't get to look at the lyrics quite as much as I liked. I don't know. I like to be familiar with the lyrics. It helps me get in the space of the music, and sort of what I'm not, I guess, supposed to be feeling, but what the artist was intending. And as I sort of glanced at the lyrics when we were listening to it, just listening to it, it helped put me in that place, put me in Blackwater Park. And I appreciated just the overall encompassing way that they're able to put that I don't know, it's so thick. The atmosphere of it is so thick. You can almost feel it literally. And that's what I mostly got from the album.
Well, that's a cool point you make about the atmosphere, and I'll tell you what it comes from. Okay, this is my perspective on it. This came out in 2001. If you think in your mind about what was poppin' in rock and metal back in 2001 when this came out, like what would have been considered mainstream, it was mostly nu metal.
Yeah.
So we had bands like System of a Down, Slipknot, Linkin Park, Mudvayne, who else? There were a lot of them. So a lot of those bands, their songs are a lot shorter. They're not trying to build atmosphere. Yeah. They're trying to hit you in the mouth with a really catchy riff, a catchy hook, and get you to buy the single or buy the album. Yeah. And it's like a very commercialized thing. When this came out, this was very underground. This was considered like an artistic statement, like a piece of fine art. It's like the difference between going to see the Avengers at the movie theater and then going to Ragtag to see some like indie underground film. That's like this really, it's like very art house, like art for art's sake kind of thing. So that's kind of what they were going when they made this album. I believe, I could be wrong, but they were kind of turning their nose up to a lot of the commercial stuff that was coming out at the time. And some people say that's pretentious, or or whatever. And the music is a little self-indulgent and pretentious, but at the same time, they're trying to create real art, you know?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, I mean, because it's like, there's riffs that I've heard that I could listen to for like just the 10 minutes could be just one riff.
Yeah.
You know, and so I can appreciate, you know, drawing it out to listen to it or to just to be able to appreciate it. Like I said, for me, it made the experience harder because, you know, everything was longer and there were like the riffs, they were so good. They sounded so cool, but there's so many. It's hard for me to like isolate and remember stuff. Given, I mean, I haven't listened to it the most, but you know, just for me personally, how I listen to music and stuff, you know, that's how it hit me. But yeah, I feel like I should say some more shit that I really liked. Oh yeah, the funeral portrait. That song was on Clone Hero, so I was actually a little bit familiar with that one. I played it. But I thought that one did a good job of keeping its atmosphere, but also just keeping me entertained, I guess, being catchy. Yeah, just the overall flow of it I enjoyed because, you know, I mean, some of these songs don't really even have choruses, so that's a abnormal flow that I'm not used to.
Yeah.
So, you know, because I'm be like, well, you know, if the chorus comes back around, I can kind of grab onto that and remember it. Or at least just have an idea of what's going on with the song in my head, but I don't. I'm like, they're on some riff. Like, this is riff number 5. And then, like, I think literally on Leper Affinity, it's like 4 or 5 riffs, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, they're doing the one from the beginning again.
Yeah.
Which, you know, that's nice. But, yeah. Oh, yeah, and on the funeral portrait, just the final harmony, or, like, the vocals, it was very grand. Gave me a good image of, like, riding into the afterlife epically.
Yeah.
Because the song was talking about, how it was like, you get to the end of your life and all you got is this fucking funeral portrait of yourself. That's what it all comes to. But, I don't know, the end of the song sounded a little more epic. A little less depressing than that.
Shout out to Kiev Gibbs, okay? I don't know if you guys watch his channel, but he's a composer and an audio engineer. And he's not an amateur. He makes money. He supports himself making music. So
I think I might have seen
he's the real deal. But he does a YouTube channel where he kind of breaks songs down, and I think he's done Blackwater Park on his channel. But he brought up the idea of what's called theater of the mind. So theater of the mind is a fancy way of saying, does the music evoke some kind of mental imagery, or does it get your imagination working?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of catchy songs out there that don't really do that.
Yeah.
You know, but they just sound good.
Oh yeah.
And they're fun to you know, you get drunk and you put on one of those songs and then you headbang and you're like, yeah, this is badass. I love. Or you go to the gym, you pump weights and then you listen to that and you're like, yeah, this is cool. Yeah. But then there's other music that's designed to literally take you on a journey in your mind while you're listening to it. Yeah. And that's kind of what's going on right here. Yeah. So that's what this is designed to do. It may not do that for you. It may not work. But that's the intent, I think. And so when you brought that up, that image of riding out into the afterlife, that's like exactly what they're going for. Yeah. Is they want you to have some sort of an experience of like, you get your imagination working in some way, form, or fashion. Yeah. You know, and however it does that is going to be unique to the individual, so.
Yeah. I guess music is good for doing that, and I like the supplement of the lyrics as well. But no, I really do appreciate just getting any sort of in my head like release imagery or relief or anything.
Yeah, it's cool that music can actually do that, you know, but it's not going to be party music. And this isn't by any means the only um, band or the only album that's designed to do this. You know, there's tons of them that do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more about sinking into the journey, you know, and going on the journey as opposed to just getting your quick fix on like a catchy chorus or a badass solo or like or a sick riff or something. You know, it's about communicating a sense of imagination. You know.
Yeah. No, they do a good job. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say really.
So, what did you think of it overall? Did you enjoy it? Would you return to it? Do you think it's worthy of being called a classic?
Goodness, given the context, I mean, see, it's like given the things that you've said, I'm like, yeah, I think so. I mean, if no one else was doing that, and they were sort of introducing this, I think it's really good for that. I think it could be refined, maybe to an extent.
You mean like cut down like some of the
maybe chop off
trim
some
the
of
fat off of some of the songs?
Yeah, and like just help some of the riffs kind of meld together better, I guess. I think, it's just like riff after riff, and I don't know if there's a lot of connection between them other than the fact that they're like in the same key or just have a similar vibe. But yeah, no, and I mean for the atmosphere, it's insane, honestly, as far as the atmosphere goes, and the musicianship itself. Despite how the riffs go together individually, I like them a lot, and I like the way that they're able to put multiple things together within those riffs. Like I said, the dual guitar parts and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think so. I'd give it like a 7.
Okay.
But and that's like super personal.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a really common criticism of prog metal in general, and even prog rock, is that a lot of times what these bands will do is what makes them quote unquote progressive. A lot of times is the song structure. So
yeah,
a lot of
I feel like Rush has introduced a lot of like that.
Yeah, a lot of listen to La Villa Strangiato sometime.
Okay.
By Rush off of Hemispheres, and you'll see what I'm talking about. A lot of songs, the conventional song structure, you know what it is, right? It's got these parts, it's got a verse, it's got chorus, it repeats these sections a few times. Yeah. In metal or rock, you'll have a solo somewhere around 2/3 of the way through, and then they'll close it out with a return to the chorus or the beginning riff or whatever. Yeah. So a lot of what progressive bands will do is they'll abandon that structure, and then what the song ends up being a lot of the time is a sequence of parts that don't necessarily have anything to do with each other, or they might be loosely connected. But what you're seeing is several ideas appear in sequence over the course of one song, and they may only be, like I said, loosely connected. So as a new listener to prog might listen to a song and say, that song was all over the place, or those parts, those sections in the song didn't really fit together. And that might be a valid criticism, but what I'm saying is that's kind of like part and parcel of the entire progressive experience. It's like you're witnessing and you're listening to songs that they may have 5 or 6 or 7 parts, and they're all kind of sandwiched together, and as you transition from one to the other, it's taking you on a journey. But the parts themselves may seem like it may seem like several different songs all jammed into one song.
Yeah.
So that's a very common criticism of progressive rock. They say, well, the songs aren't really cohesive,
Well, and I think that's probably why I never got further than like Rush.
Yeah.
Because I liked classic rock a lot from like middle school onwards. But I think because I liked the sound of prog. It's like weird. It's unique. And definitely would have drew me towards it, which is why I liked Rush. But I think that unorthodox structure might have been what kept me from being able to get anything further, like I don't know, like King Crimson or anything like that. Because they were on Guitar Hero, 21st Century Schizoid
Man, yeah.
And I don't think that really left an impression on me.
Yeah.
And I feel like it should have, but...
Well, I appreciate you being open-minded enough to give this record a chance.
Yeah. Well, thanks for showing it to me.
Guys, let us know what you think of this record, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This came out 21 years ago, and it is revered as a classic, but as we've seen, it may not be aging well, or maybe it is aging well, I don't know. And everybody's going to have their own opinion on it, their own experience, so let us know what you guys think about this album. If you love it, if you hate it, and maybe what you would rate as far as, on a 1 to 10, what you would rate this album. So anyway, thanks for watching. My name is Scott.
I'm Brandon.
And please like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to check us out in our next video. Peace, guys.
See ya.